In this portion of Module 4, we'll explore the element of image, including the topics of metaphor, simile, personification, and onomatopoeia. There are many more things we could include in this, but I think these will be good tools for you as you make your own literature analyses. Let me begin by presenting you with a sonnet, and we'll work our way into these interesting topics by means of this piece. Sonnet 18 by William Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more fair and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. And every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance, or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Image is a way that an author can make his or her writing more vivid. There are several ways that this can be accomplished. Some of the more common means of imagery are that of comparison. In Sonnet 18 of Shakespeare, he says straight away that he's comparing the beloved to a summer's day. In the first line, we immediately think of a wonderful summer's day. Oh, he probably is going to say how much like a summer's day his beloved is, because a summer day is great. He's able to take this image through a comparison and actually show how much more wonderful the beloved is. I'll compare you to a summer's day. Well, you're nicer and you're more beautiful. Here's what's wrong with a summer's day. It's full of rough winds, even in May, and summer's really not all that long. So you last longer than a summer's day. This comparison of the beloved to a summer's day is an element called metaphor. Metaphor compares one thing to another. In fact, metaphor can be less obvious than just saying, I'm going to compare this to that. If we look in the fifth line of this sonnet, there is an image there that really is a metaphor. The line reads, sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines. The eye of heaven? What's that? Well, it's a metaphor for the sun. That metaphor, that image, is continued in the next line. If the eye of heaven, that is the sun, is looking down at the earth, then his face must be very sunny. Line 6 says, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. That is, by clouds passing over the face of the sun. So we have here an image of the face of the sun. The sun is now personified. That is, it's made to seem like a human being. Through this metaphor, this image, the sun is now a face looking down with a gold complexion and a very hot eye. You may be familiar with the partner to metaphor, which is the term simile. A simile is also a comparison, but a simile is perhaps more obvious because it uses the words like or as. You are like a summer's day. You're so pretty. You are just as changing as the seasons. This is as hot as an oven. All of those are examples of a simile rather than a metaphor, simply by adding that single word, like or as. Already in this sonnet, we've encountered the use of metaphor to support the image. I just briefly mentioned another manipulation of the element of image, and that is personification, giving inanimate objects human characteristics, like the sun, which is a big star in our sky, I guess not even really a very big star as stars go, and yet we're giving it a face and saying that it has an eye and it's looking down at the earth. Yet another point within the element of image is a rather fun one, even if it is difficult to spell, and that is onomatopoeia. Sometimes it's possible to use a word to describe something not with a metaphor or a simile where you're comparing, and not with personification where you're trying to make the inanimate object behave like a human being or look something like a human being, but instead you can actually use the sounds of the words themselves to evoke the image that you're trying to portray. For example, one stanza of Edgar Allan Poe's famous poem, The Bells. Hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells. What a world of merriment their melody foretells! How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night, while the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight, keeping time, time, time in a sort of runic rhyme to the tintinnabulation that so musically wells from the bells, 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 from the jingling and the tinkling of the bells. This poem uses several instances of onomatopoeia. In this stanza of the poem, the bells portrayed are small. They're sleigh bells. A sledge is another word for a sleigh. So we're hearing little bells that are hung on the harnesses of horses as they draw the sleigh in the winter. Words that sound like what they're trying to portray. Well, one of them is the word jingle at the very end of this stanza. Jingle, jingle. You could say, yeah, it sounds a little bit like the sound of a bell. Another word is tinkling or tinkle. Those t-k sounds really evoke the percussive qualities, especially of tiny bells. Also, the idea that perhaps these bells are jingling and ringing in time as the horses gallop, so that the galloping itself has a rhythm. Look at how Poe repeats some of the words, keeping time, time, time in a sort of runic rhyme. He's given actual rhythm to a line of words that evokes the feel of the galloping horses and the jingling of the bells. There are some more words. Twinkle, twinkle. Yeah, I guess if stars twinkle, they must do it with tw-k, those T and K sounds. The look of a star twinkling is meant to sound or look like the tinkling of a bell. It's that same glittering quality. And notice he in fact uses the word crystalline in the middle of this stanza, which adds to that glittering, glassy quality. There is one other word in this stanza that is one of my favorites, and it might be a word you haven't encountered before, but in fact, it means exactly the same thing as all the other onomatopoetic words in this stanza. That's tintinnabulation. Tintinnare is the Latin word to jingle or to tinkle, to jangle. You use it for bells because tintin, tintin is meant to sound like the ringing of bells, that percussive quality. And so in English, we use the word tintinnabulation. Well, we might not use it often, but now you know. Next time you want to sing jingle bells, sing tintinnabulate bells, tintinnabulate bells. Maybe not. Nevertheless, we hear this very effective device of onomatopoeia. Later in this poem, Poe uses different bells to convey different emotions and stages in the life of a human, and his words of onomatopoeia change from stanza to stanza. So not every bell in this entire poem would be this sort of jingly, glittery quality, but gradually the bells get heavier and more serious. Onomatopoeia is a really fun element to notice. It's comparable in a comic book to the words that you see around characters when they're engaged in a real fight. Pow, zap, biff, bang. In fact, those words actually are all onomatopoetic. And in sort of classic cartoons, comic books, those words have been used exactly in that way.